I have a comment on some of the minuses. Certainly, most positive. There are some minuses. One is damage to roads. We hear that quite a bit in the press and so on. It's true because heavy equipment, especially with the hydrofracking of Marcellus wells, we have to differentiate between Marcellus, which is about 8,000 to 9,000 feet, the Upper Devonian, which is 3,000 to 4,000 feet maximum. These are massive fracks into many trucks and heavy equipment, fracking equipment. The drilling rig comes in parts and is put together. But it does do damage to roads, but these companies have to bond the roads, both with PennDOT and both with the township. And they're held responsible for this and made to pay, oftentimes even if they didn't do the damage to the road. I'm familiar with one company that had a road bonded in a township, and they drilled an Upper Devonian well, and a utility was putting in poles and new lines there, and they had a lot more equipment, and they did a lot more of the damage, because I witnessed this. But since they didn't have to bond the road, the gas company had to pay to repair this road, which they did. So there is damage to the roads, but it has to be repaired. And it's bonded both with PennDOT, with individual townships. And some townships are more severe than others. Also, mud and so on. Drill sites tend to be muddy, is brought out onto the roads. Operators are required, such as Hastings-Borough, for example, where well was drilled recently, they have to have a brush truck out there to keep the mud off the truck. But I went by a construction site the other day, there was more mud out there than a gas company, but they didn't have a brush truck. But that's another minus. There will be mud on the road. And the other is, if you have a forested area, and I live in a forest, they have to clear off the trees to make a drill site. And if it's a large Marcellus horizontal operation, they might take out 20 or 30 acres of timber, but they pay the landowner double stumpage for the timber. Now this timber doesn't grow back right away, but once it's restored, lime fertilizers, E&S plants are out there, erosion sedimentation control plants are required on site. Then this can be planted. And the Game Commission, and I recommend this to anyone who has wells, but the Game Commission has a mix of grasses, birds foot trefoil and things for the game, the wildlife. And this can be planted on these sites, and so it helps the diversity of the habitat, and it's good for the wildlife. So any well site can become a different habitat for wildlife if it's planted properly. And the landowner, when he signs a lease, can put a lot of these things in there, that it will be seeded with the game mix. You can get this off the website from the Game Commission. They require it on all their locations, and they told me they've improved the habitat in many places where wells have been drilled. So yeah, it's a temporary minus when there's mud, removal of trees, there's noise, but eventually site's restored and it can be planted in accordance with Game Commission requirements.
Jump in real quick there. And Eric can correct me on this number if I'm wrong, but the number I've heard most recently quoted was that the Marcellus shale industry has paid over $411 million to repair these local roads, almost always much better than the condition they found them in. And many companies have gone to actually go in and improve the road before they ever actually go in and drill. That way that there's not going to be any sort of period there where the roads are in serious state of disrepair.
Yeah, I was going to make a comment similar to that. Before we even go into a site, we call everybody on the road or knock on the doors and visit with them and let them know that we'll be traveling the road. If you have any issues, here's our card numbers. Call us. Sometimes we get a call where somebody's driving a little bit too fast, speeding, so we get the township police out there or anybody to crack down on them. So we're constantly involved with all the people along our routes and just let them know, we're here to do this down as safe as possible and as environmentally friendly as possible. If you see something wrong, you tell us.
One of the things that brings up in talking about, in our title with the environment, I mean, it has been our experience with our member companies, especially the E&P companies, that if you see something that, you're in that area, you see something that you're not, completely happy with, they are very responsive and environmentally friendly, and environmentally responsible companies that appreciate, that honesty that you're able to provide them and able to, give them that, that insight, because these guys can't be everywhere in every corner all the time. So, they appreciate, the honesty of something like that.
Gentlemen, yes, we have two questions here. You in the red shirt first.
Recently in Indiana County, there's been some concern about drilling within the conservation zone around county and state parks. And I was just wondering what your thoughts were on the balance between preserving those kinds of areas as pristine natural environments versus drilling in those areas or the opportunity to maybe drill somewhere else and still get that gas.
I could probably speak to that. In the conservation zones, the oil and gas drilling has always been permitted. The concerns that have been raised have been the larger scope and scale of Marcellus shale drilling versus traditional oil and gas drilling. I think that there is absolutely common ground and a happy medium that can be struck so that the companies can, and the landowners that own those oil and gas rights that are now worth a significant amount of money to be able to develop those resources, and while still preserving the serenity of the park. My dad is an avid outdoorsman. He's written the outdoor hunting and fishing page for the Indiana Gazette here for the last 25 years. I've probably been out on Yellow Creek Lake as much as anybody around here. It's the company that we lease for, I'm not sure if you're aware, is the company that is proposing to do the drilling out there right now. Well, one of two companies now. But we very much understand the concerns, and we're willing to compromise and take additional precautions to make sure that not only is the water not impacted, but the concerns with the light industrial activity that Marcellus drilling is impacting through noise or odors or anything like that. The only real concern that I can see would be noise pollution, which I did a little bit of studying into this, and I think that there is, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there is a 500-foot setback in that conservation zone. It's called the buffer zone that does ban any oil and gas drilling from within 500 feet of the park boundary. And most of your rigs, the noise that you're going to hear from them is very minimal out of about 1,000 feet. So I think that where we're proposing to drill, and where most companies, where they drill horizontally, I would imagine would be able to set up at such a distance from the park that you're not really going to see much of an impact at all.
One of the other things that question, that the professor talked about it just a little bit, but it also gives that park or that conservation area, whether it be through Game Commission or whatever, the opportunity to restore a roadway or a pipeline in a manner that maybe they weren't ever able to do before. I mean, they might be able to make new habitat for deer or turkey or bear or whatever it may be, and that's they look at that as an opportunity for them in the conservation area to make a habitat in the restoration to the best of their ability, and maybe something that they weren't able to do before. Maybe it's bring the American chestnut back, or something to that nature. So again, they're looking for at the opportunity of it at some open space that they can restore back to something brand new for them.
Well, it's worth noting that you're probably not intimately familiar with this, because this is kind of an Indiana County specific thing. As I understand it, it really is specific only to Indiana County, but it's all private land. This isn't the state park. This is privately held property, the majority of which is farmed or developed right now. And it's worth noting that there are some places, especially inside the Yellow Creek Conservation Zone, that are over 2 miles from the lake itself. So I think it would be awfully hard to argue that 2 miles from the lake, having gas well drilling going on would in any way whatsoever impact the serenity of the park.
Okay, I'm not